This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self. Hey everyone, I am just going to forewarn you that you are going to want to listen to this conversation more than once. You're probably going to have something where you can take notes nearby. And you're definitely going to want to make sure that at some point you go to the episode page where all of the links to the resources are. I had such a fabulous conversation with my friend Neha Sangwan. She is an internal medicine physician and international speaker. She's been on multiple TEDx stages. She consults with all kinds of organizations like American Express, American Heart Association, Google, and more. And she is the CEO and founder of Intuitive Intelligence. And Neha is on a mission to address and heal what she calls the burnout pandemic. And she has a book that is just coming out called Power by Me, From Burned Out to Fully Charged at Work and in Life. And I was honored to be amongst the community Neha invited to read the book to us as she wrote it and give feedback and listen to it and get a preview. There is such richness in every single page of this book. And she has previous books that are also gems, Talk RX and others. So with that, let me just tell you that when we think about stress and burnout, we hear it all over the place. People are burned out, people are tired, and that's true. And there's a really important distinction between having excess stress and being burned out. So where there's exhaustion, there's cynicism and ineffectiveness. And Neha talks about how in our world where the prevalent belief is faster is better, it's one of the contributing factors to this besides our own limiting beliefs and more. And what we need to shift to is that together is faster and start looking at all of these different facets of our life as whether they provide us a net gain or a net drain of energy. She talks about the 3-time rule, the sunrise rule, our biological danger of not belonging and how that gets in our way. There's just so much in here where you're going to want to take notes and use this to help you, use this to help your organizations. I think you're going to get a ton out of this conversation. Neha, I am so looking forward to this conversation. I was so appreciative that I got to be part of your book club where you read your book to us, and I got to be part of that, and it was so amazing. And there's many things that struck me that I'm so excited to talk about, but one is you so graciously share your own journey with burnout. And I remember as you were telling it and then reading it again in the book, I was like, I know so many people that experience this, particularly in healthcare. And I've heard so many people lately across industries that they're throwing around stress and burnout, and I'm almost hearing an apathy with organizational leaders, like people are just throwing around that burnout word and they're starting to dismiss it. So we need to level set, first of all, of what the heck burnout is, and then dive into why we need to care. So tell us how you define burnout and how we know if people really are burnt out.
Yeah, we tend to go to a place where we disregard aspects of our life experience when we don't know what to do about them. A great example would be emotions. Imagine anybody growing up in their family of origin and starting to cry or yell or get upset or get anxious. If the adults around you don't actually know what to do with that, what do? They shut it down. Shut that down, go into your room, and don't come out until you have a smile on your face. And so I think what you're just describing, Rosie, is a very dangerous wave that's going to get us in trouble. When people don't understand signals coming up in their own bodies, their heart racing, their stomach turning, their jaw clenching, and they ignore it, what happens? It gets bigger. It doesn't go away. It turns into something even bigger that you can't ignore. So let's just start this whole thing with, if you are experiencing signs, signals, symptoms, trust yourself, because you know what it's like to be for this many years inside your body. Don't tune out your own intuition. Get curious, not furious. And if other people tell you that this isn't something real, the first thing I want you to do is get a clean bill of health from your medical professional, because everything I talk about today, yes, it could be burnout, but yes, it could also be an underlying medical condition. So the first thing we do is get a clear bill of health. Then we can talk about overwork, stress, burnout. So let's start with, what is burnout? Burnout is defined as a triad of exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness. So let's go through each of those. The first one is exhaustion. So it can be physical, mental, emotional exhaustion. It usually occurs over a period of time. And then what edges you even farther down the road to burnout is this voice, this cynicism, this experience where you start hearing yourself say things in your mind or out loud like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, all this energy and effort, it's not going to really make a difference. And so when that cynicism creeps in, now all of a sudden, the exhaustion, where maybe you aren't able to recover after the normal weekend, maybe you used to take a glass of wine to take the edge off of your day, and now you're noticing you're requiring 2 or 3, and it's not really working anymore. So you got this exhaustion, then you got this cynicism that starts creeping in, and then finally, you hit the wall of ineffectiveness, where you can't really function any longer doing things the way that you're doing them. So burnout is a triad of exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness. Crazily enough, not really recognized by the medical community. The WHO just in 2019 acknowledged this is like a syndrome. It's for ongoing prolonged stress at work. So here's something I want to say. You can have stress in any area of your life, and I have seen it lead to patients having burnout.
I'm so glad you said all that because I think about times in my life where I was probably verging on burnout, and it was a trifecta of not just work. It was just the demands of stuff that was going on with the health of our kid and just other stuff that's going on in our life. And I think right now, so many people that I know are dealing with aging parents and they're dealing with that, or their coworkers are dealing with aging parents. Or you have a lot of people that are in the sandwich generation that also have kids. And there's just a lot of demands that are coming at us. And I think so often this gets into that integration between work life and personal life where it's this perfect storm. And I think so often we think, oh, it's just a work thing, but it's not. And it gets into why organizations need to actually care about our well-being and not in a way where they're doing the stupid wellness programs attached to insurance premiums, but no, like, is your workplace norms and your culture and your staffing and your expectations and all of that set up to promote people taking care of themselves in a way that then allows them to turn around and contribute to the organization?
There's some systems that are set up to burn you out and they expect an 80% burn rate and turnover. Now, if that is not you and not your organization, now you're talking about a different game, which is it's silly not to invest in us, because if you invest in us, then I am going to function so much better over time. And I have 100% of finite energy. Listen, I've got 100% of energy. If there's a drain going on in one area, does that leave less energy for the other area? Of course. So the idea that we only compartmentalize our care about people to their work environment and don't really pay attention, that was a very convenient way that people said, don't bring those emotions to work. Just be steady and perform consistently. We are not robots. We are biological human beings that require and follow the rhythms of nature in order to function optimally. So we must get feedback from our bodies. We can exert and then we must rest. The cycle is what nature wants. The exert yourself and rest. That's how we build muscles. We perform at work and at home and enjoy, and then we get rest. And so somewhere along the way, we've decided that faster is better and that you can do more with less, and it's profit over people. And these beliefs that we have come up with and almost bought into in our external world without even thinking about it are driving way past what our biology can actually handle. And I believe that this is one of the big reasons that we're burning out. We have to be in harmony, which is nature, biology. We are not machines, and even machines require downtime and maintenance.
I love that. You're speaking to my heart because we always talk about that we have to stop treating people like machines or predictable, controllable machines or even lab rats or small children or something. It's just that old school thinking doesn't work. So I want to talk about the role of boundaries because this is such a critical piece. And it was interesting because just a couple of weeks ago, Deloitte put out their annual well-being report. And not surprising, they said something like 74% of employees are struggling to take time off or disconnect from work. And I hear this all the time with the leaders I coach across industries. They feel like they have to be on, something will happen. They can't unplug. They can't have that rest that you talk about. And then there's all kinds of other stats that are way below 50% in the low 40s about people not taking breaks during the day, that they're not getting enough sleep, that they're not having adequate time with friends and family, like all the other areas of well-being. It's not happening. So this is really prevalent. So let's talk about the relationship between boundaries and burnout, because I feel like that's a really critical fulcrum that we can dig into both individually and organizationally.
Let's just start with boundaries are burnout. So if you had to say to me, what's one thing after studying this for 20 years and writing a book on it and living through burnout myself, I would say if you want to know how to assess when your energy starts declining, figure out where it is, where am I losing that energy, and how can I get some tools to replenish it, how you can figure out where you are from burned out to fully charged on that spectrum is by whether you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, or spiritual level. So we will talk about that because, first of all, you're talking about boundaries. There's different kinds of boundaries. There's physical boundaries, there's mental boundaries, there's emotional boundaries, there's social boundaries, and there's spiritual boundaries. And so you first have to know, where am I having a net gain or a net drain of energy? Once you know where you're having a net drain, you can go there and think about setting up boundaries, because boundaries are needed anywhere there's a net drain of energy. There's different kinds of boundaries, not only what I just spoke about, which is physical boundaries. That literally is, my skin is the largest organ of my body, and it separates me from you. There's also physical boundaries in the sense of what you learned growing up. Did you share clothes? Are you okay letting people share your car? Stay in your home? Those are all physical boundaries. So there's space. The next type of boundary we can talk about is mental boundaries. What are you willing to discuss or not? So are you someone who says, I don't talk about politics at work. I don't talk about spirituality and religion. Like, those are things that don't belong here. So noticing what is game for you? What are you willing to delve into? When are you willing to engage mentally? And where do you put boundaries? Emotionally, it would be about what you're willing to feel. Do you have that friend that's always optimistic? No matter what's happening, they turn the lemon into lemonade and put a whole bag of sugar in it. Some people are unwilling to feel disappointment, unwilling to feel devastation, heartbreak. What about the friend who won't date and hasn't dated in a long time because they're unwilling to feel that heartbreak? So noticing there's certain emotions that we say are okay and some that aren't. And there's also some people who won't allow themselves to get too excited. Social boundaries are as simple as, hey, you and I are going out. I drank 3 Mai Tais and you didn't drink. How do we split the bill? There's social boundaries that happen that are going on every day. And finally, spiritual boundaries. That's about where you'll take risks. What will you discuss around awe, wonder, the mysteries of our lives and of this world? Are you willing to go where people don't know and explore that? So those are the different types of boundaries. And then it becomes about the experiences we've had in our lives up until now. Because your family of origin, your upbringing, your culture, whether you were moved around to many schools or stayed in the same house for 20 years until you got up and left, all of that lays the blueprint of what boundaries you have developed to keep you safe. If you had an older sibling who beat up on you, you may have very strong boundaries about your personal space. You may not want anybody to be anywhere near you. Now, if you were someone who grew up in an affectionate family where people are always putting their arms around each other, you hugged and kissed, you may go into the workplace and you may behave in a way that other people do or don't like because of that upbringing. And you learn those boundaries very quickly. And those are social boundaries. So as you can see, boundaries is complicated. First of all, there's many different types. There are too many and not enough. So too much, too porous, too rigid, and just right. So where would you like to go in those? And I'm happy to delve in and see what we can do here.
I so appreciate your description. It was reminding me of a couple things. One, and I know that When you think about Brene Brown's work, and she always talks about people who don't want to feel too excited because joy is an extremely vulnerable emotion. So if I stay middle of the road, if I stay kind of numb, I can't get hurt. Boundaries can become that form of armor. And when you think about the work that we do with leaders using Bob Keegan and Lisa Leahy's immunity to change work, it's those narratives that we formed in childhood that are that script that we don't realize it's our meaning making system that maybe made sense when we were young to protect us, to keep us safe, but they're getting in our way now. And so I think there's just such richness in that. And so I know that we have to start to look at that and understand our self-limiting narrative and where the boundaries came from and our boundary blueprint and all of that. I think what would be helpful is when you think about burnout, whether it's too porous or too rigid when it comes to boundaries, what are some of the boundaries that people can lean into and get curious about and look at and maybe reframe a relationship with that can help them either prevent burnout or if they're experiencing it?
We're in Europe right now, and one of the lovely women who owns a restaurant here, I said to her as she was serving us the food, I love you. You have made my entire summer so much easier. I feel like I can belong here, be well fed, well nourished. You have just made my day. And I saw her scurrying around, just so busy in the kitchen, serving. And it was interesting because she said, oh, you are very sweet. Love is not for me. And it really struck me because I said to her, I wonder where your heart got broken because you have transferred all of that heartbreak into the love that you make this food with and you nourish and serve us with. And what I had seen is how exhausted she was each time I came in because she was doing it all herself. And so I said to her, tell me about those heart glasses that you wear. Do you own this place? She said, yes, I'm the owner. There's no time for love or fun. I wear these red heart glasses. You must be very stern with all of your employees so they don't smoke, they always wash their hands, they don't get into trouble, and they always do their job. So you can never show love at work. So what I do is I have to be very stern and I put on my glasses so they can see that, no, I'm really loving. That's why I'm being so stern. What an interesting way to protect herself, to be able to be more of an iron woman, get things done for the good of the customer, but also at the same time, let a physical boundary here represent love while the words coming out of your mouth are saying, no smoking, no this, no break. And so the first thing I'd say to people is pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to the rules you've made up, whether you can be friends with someone at work, whether you can actually go for a happy hour afterwards, whether you have to be really stern. Who are you at work and where have you built in these boundaries that determine what's happening? Well, I am happy to tell you, we eat at her restaurant at least 3 times a week. And now when we were leaving to move out to another place, she was kissing us on both sides of the cheek. We need to take photos. You brought so much love in here. I said, oh no, the love was already here. We just needed to tap into it. And so I think that's something we need to begin with, which is what boundaries are there already in place? Do you believe working hard is required for you to succeed? And I'd ask you, what if it could be fun and easy? What would that look like? Usually at work, it's about how people are perceived. So they behave in certain ways in order to get the level of approval externally. And I think boundaries, they're less of themselves and more of who others want them to be. Or if you're the owner, like she was, she told me how to have the hard conversations if someone should violate the rules. And so that's why the rules were so harsh for her. When I asked her to tell me about her parents, she told me, my mom is an iron lady. My dad is very soft. And me, I'm in the middle. We hope that her boundaries were a little more flexible and loosened in this. So I think it's about paying attention to the parts of your job you really enjoy and the parts that you enjoy a little bit less, that feel your muscles are tense. You're feeling more stiff because you have to do this thing. Pay attention to where you've put up these rigid boundaries and to where you feel more like yourself.
Well, I love that story. First of all, I can just picture this little Italian lady with heart glasses. It makes my heart smile. It makes me smile. But I think it's such an important thing about we don't pay attention anymore. And I was coaching literally just last week several leaders that struggle with the growth feedback conversations and having to call their teams to greatness and have accountability because there's this underlying assumption or narrative of some sort that conflict is a bad thing, or that my job's to keep the peace, or that if somehow I upset people, I'm not going to recover from it, or people have to like me, or I can't let them down and still be respected. There's a lot of this very rigid either or thinking that gets in people's way. What's coming to mind as you're saying that is that when you're looking at the boundaries, like, yeah, is this serving me well? Or is this not serving me well? Do I have dread when I have to interact with this person? Because maybe I'm too porous in my boundary versus too rigid. And I just think that we don't pay attention because we're in go mode. People don't even have a second to stop and breathe to even check in with themselves. So I think that's such a critical thing, because I think that there is a misconception, not just amongst people who have any kind of formal leadership role, but it is the do more with less. Like you said, faster is better. And I think we've lost that realization of how critical it is to take time to periodically check in and how am I doing and what am I noticing and how do I want to course correct, or where is this serving me well or where is it not? So I think that's critical.
Agreed. And it starts really with, do we accept our own physical signals coming in? So what you're speaking about is biological. At some point in our lives, we watched how our brothers, our sisters, our parents handled conflict. And we saw whether they lost relationships because of it. We ourselves then mimicked them in some version and have had success and failures in our own relationship because of how we've communicated. There's a biological danger that people feel about not belonging. Also, the discomfort around disappointment in themselves or in others. If I have an honest conversation with you, Rosie, about something that's not working for me and I draw a boundary around it, it might be the end of you and my relationship. And so isn't it easier to start adapting and just turning ourselves into pretzels to try and accommodate so that I don't have to face that thing? Now, my first book was Talk RX, 5 Steps to Honest Conversations That Create Connection, Health, and Happiness. You can get it on Audible, but it's an entire book on the 5 steps to having honest conversations. If you don't trust yourself in having real-time, honest conversations, you will be doing everything you can biologically to avoid them, just like not having the conversation about hybrid work, not having the open dialogue around changes that need to happen in a company, and just making the decision on your own. So people will respond by either avoiding something altogether or unilaterally, in an authoritarian way, making a decision and saying, tough luck, this is what we decided. It is the conscious leader who is willing to enter into the messiness of our co-creation of the world and the pace at which it's moving, and also understands that we must do it together. So if faster is better, I'm going to argue that together is faster. Because what's happening in burnout is we're all responding to our emails and the external world and the pace at which it's moving. We've forgotten about the inside world. If you leave one world behind, guess what? You got to get up, go back and pick it up and bring it along. Wouldn't it be faster to go together? But in the beginning, we're like, right now it's faster. It's almost like getting on a highway, gunning it at 80 miles an hour and realizing you're in Michigan and heading to Florida, but you're on the north-facing highway heading the wrong direction. So this idea of faster is better is a problem because we actually need to slow down in order to speed up. So the ways that I have teach people about this is, first of all, when it's time to have a conflict, the way you want to do it is you want to start by, what data do I have? Did I receive an email? Did I not get a response? Did someone say something? Was it third party? Was it directly with the person I need to have this conversation with? The second piece is there's also data inside you. My muscles tightening, my throat constricting, my heart racing. That's data too. Tell yourself, how do you know there's conflict here? By looking at what's happened externally and who you got that information from, as well as your own internal body. Then you move to step 2, where you put that data from inside you and outside you together to make meaning of it. So the meaning-making machine starts to make thoughts and say what it means. Except be really careful here. There's a couple different ways you can go. You can make it about yourself, personalize it. You can blame it on the other person, or you can generalize it and make it about something bigger than me or you. Then, depending on which of those ways that you think and put your thoughts together, determines how you feel. So if I personalize it, make it about me, whatever went wrong, I might feel shame, I might feel humiliated, I might feel embarrassed or rejected. If I make it about you, I might be mad, upset, feel disrespected. If I make it about something bigger than me or you, I might feel worried, concerned. I hope everything's okay. Your thoughts and how you put together that data definitely determine how you feel. Once you feel something, you're going to want something. And lastly, what action am I willing to take? So when you understand those 5 steps, avoiding conflict melts away because you understand and can decipher your own body's signals as well as the situation around you. And in the Boundaries book, I do say in the social section, if you know that this is something that you struggle with, that's something you get and go dive in because it's a big piece of the social energy drain that we experience.
I love that you went through that. And what comes up for me with that is a couple things. One, it's sometimes we have to slow down to speed up. Kevin Cashman talks about this a lot in the pause principle. And I think we forget to pause and we are in that autopilot reactive mode. And then we either avoid a conversation or enter into it in this very reactive state versus, okay, I've taken a few moments to get clear. Like, how did I get here? What's going on? What's the data? So that I can show up with greater clarity, but also greater intentionality. Then it allows me at least an opportunity to be more open and curious rather than to go on right rigid with my mind made up that either this is going to work, it isn't. That's so critical. And I think with the disconnection that so many people have had over the past 3+ years with COVID and just what that's done to our social connection and our communication skills and whatnot, I think the interpersonal dynamics are popping up more and more because then people are like, what if I don't actually physically see people anymore? Or it's over Zoom or I let stuff go too long and how do I address it? So I think that that's such a critical thing. So whether it's about boundaries or other things, what are some of the key things that we can start doing today to start healing from burnout?
I want to jump back in when you said, should I really address this? Should I not really address it? I'm going to give people a really quick way that you know. So I have 2 rules. One is the 3-time rule. Something happens the first time and I'm like, that was a little weird. Might have just been an oversight, might have misunderstood it. The second time it happens, I file it. Like, this might be a pattern. By the 3rd time it happens, I call it the 3-time rule. You and I are having a conversation because I now have 3 examples of what I'm talking about. And it's time for me to get curious, not furious with you and find out what's happening. The other way that I know that it is time to lean into a conversation, I call the sunrise rule. So it means if you're ever up at night and you can't go to sleep and this thing is on your mind, or it's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning, that is taking over mental real estate in your brain that needs to be used for something else. So it's time to get that off your plate. Burnout doesn't happen really quickly. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you're fine, and then by the end of the week, you're burned out. Burnout is something that happens over time. There's 3 phases. The first one is the alarm phase. It almost feels like you're jumping on a treadmill that's going a little bit too fast when your heart skips a beat and you're trying to get your footing, except you just end up staying there and you start adapting to that and moving into phase 2 of burnout, which is adaptation, where your life just becomes that experience. And then something like COVID comes along. Many people around the globe were in that adaptation phase where they were barely hanging on and they just went sliding down the 3rd phase to ineffectiveness and exhaustion. That's the exhaustion phase. So in the beginning, I told you burnout is a triad of exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness. And that occurs over the alarm phase, adaptation, and exhaustion phase. So what are some things that you can do to start recovering from burnout? Number 1 is I have an awareness prescription for burnout. Will take you about 15 minutes. You can fill that in, and I'm happy to give you a link to that. And you can fill it in to kind of say, where am I having a net gain or a net drain of energy? So awareness is the first step. The second one is, let's say I was having a net drain in physical energy and a net drain in emotional energy, but my mental, social, and spiritual energy were doing great. Then I'd want to focus in that area. So in physical, I'd say food, energy, movement, sleep. And I would have you rank, how satisfied am I with the food I eat, being whole foods, nutritious throughout the day? How consistent is my energy during the day? And do I get 7 and 9 hours of quality sleep? Or do I wake up feeling rested? And in movement, do I have fun ways to move my body each day or certain times per week? How satisfied am I with those? And you rank yourself from 1 to 10. I would then ask you, what would it take to make it a 10? You know what that is. You're somebody who cooks a lot and you cook the same things. And what would take it from an 8 to a 10 is adding more variety. one new dish a month would make it feel more exciting, more vibrant. It depends on where people are having the net drain to tell them what the next thing to do is. But for people this busy, what I'd say is they think things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll catch up on the weekend. And what I'd say to you is, you may think sleep is a waste of time, and it is, if you're referring to your external to-do list and what's not getting done. But your body actually has an entire internal to-do list that has to get done during sleep. And that includes repairing your physical muscles, repairing your immune system, processing your emotions, and memory consolidation so you can remember everything that you picked up that day. So I'd say if you're one of those people that, is always go, 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 I'd say give yourself an extra half hour of sleep each day. Allow your system to be able to support you. But otherwise, you got to figure out where the area is. If you have energy crashes, you notice you have the 3 o'clock energy dip. You realize that there's times you have consistent energy and then you just start going down. What I'd say there is pay attention, because if you have a bagel, cream cheese, and a coffee, it's going to cause a spike in your insulin levels and then you're going to crash. So pay attention to how frequently you're feeding yourself. Do you have snacks like some nuts? Do you have something at hand? Or are you that person who is like, oh, it's 2 p.m. No wonder my stomach's growling and I've got nothing in sight? Because when you're in that space, you'll take energy from anywhere you can get it. A coworker's candy jar, the junk right next to you. Just don't put yourself in that desperate space. Now let's move on to mental. What's something you can do for mental pretty easily? I want you to pay attention to the 3 most common thoughts running through your mind on repeat. What are you thinking about when you're driving, you're in the shower, you're on a walk? What are the thoughts that come to you? And do they give you energy or do they drain you of energy? They're on repeat and they're usually unconscious. So I want you to identify them and make them conscious and then ask yourself, does that thought give me energy or drain me of energy? Because you might just be draining energy all on your own with nobody else doing it for you. The third one would be emotional energy. And this is a pretty easy one, actually. This one is, tell me which areas of your life you're avoiding a conversation, conflict, or a challenge. Is it financial? Is it social, personal, work? Where in your life are you avoiding conflict? Because that's an instant and constant energy drain. Same thing for emotions. Flip it. Where in your life do you receive joy? And look at all those: financial, work, home, all of that, social, and see where it gives you energy. So that's in the social realm. Now, here's the hard part. Awareness brings options. You may find that you've outgrown certain relationships, certain communities, certain aspects of your life, that you've moved on and you took those things with you, but they are no longer you. And so even in this awareness, as you drop in and you start thinking through this, please pay attention, because it might surprise you a little bit, because you don't know what's going to come up. The next one is social. And what I tell you to do there is to write down the names of the top 5 that you spend the most time with, in person or online. And I want you to put underneath there a plus if you get a net gain of energy there, and a minus if you're like drained, usually when you get off that call or leave that person or whatever it is. And I understand that there's a mix of both. You got to figure that one out. And then in the spiritual section, what I tell you is, are you somebody who knows what you value? Do you know what's most important to you? And if you don't, that's perfectly okay. Many people haven't really sat down to think about it. A quick and easy way is for you to think, if you weren't in the room, what are the 3 things that someone could say about you that would really light you up and warm your heart? What would you feel so touched and moved by that they said when you weren't in the room? Another way to do it is just think about someone you admire and write down the qualities that you admire about them. Surprise, those are going to be some of your highest values. What you can do differently is asking yourself, where do you take risks in your life? Now, for me, I don't take physical risks. You will not see me climbing on a hike in 100-degree weather because I just think it's fun. But I will take mental, emotional, social, and spiritual risks. And so what about you, Rosie? Where do you take risks and where do you not take risks as much?
Where I've taken risks in my life is definitely like it's the moving past that self-limiting stuff from childhood and like taking risks when it comes to relationships, including either speaking up. And I've set some boundaries. There's been some relationships you talk about outgrown that it's like, not serving, et cetera. So I think that for me, it's been really leaning into some of that space. I feel like I'm growing and evolving as a person, and how am I shaping that in terms of our company, our business, social, emotional, spiritual. That's probably where I'm more willing to take risks, not so much the physical.
What's so interesting is I choose friends who will take physical risks. And they're always curious about, how do you go into the emotional depths of things and you don't even worry about it? So I think it's really important also to say there's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just about noticing where your energy, where you trust yourself enough to risk, because the places you risk are where you trust yourself. And the places you don't risk are where you don't trust yourself. And the reason this is important in our world right now is the world is changing so fast that the more places we can adapt, we're agile, we can innovate, and we can risk, the more able to handle this fast-paced world that we're in. So the really big deal here becomes, if there's something you know you're not that great at, surround yourself with people who are good at it and trust them. Because we're in a world now where you're not going to get away with not figuring out how to move into all of these spaces. And the last question I'd ask people is, what do you have faith in? When people would come in with a heart attack, a stroke, a pneumonia, and their whole world had just cracked open in a way that they never thought that they would be the 58-year-old with a stroke. In those moments, I'd ask them, what do you have faith in? Some people would say, the next generation, Mother Nature, my community, my family, my faith. People have different answers, but you want to know what you have faith in. So I'd say the first step in getting clear on burnout and starting to heal yourself is to know yourself better. Know what has gotten you here. Once you know yourself, look at where you've adapted and contracted in order to keep things intact. And in those places, when you notice that you're constricted in your muscles or in your body, pay attention to that, because that's taking a lot of your energy.
I love all of that. You have so many checklists and so many assessments and so many extra tools and so many links, and taking something that seems so big and nebulous to something that's very tangible, which I think is important. And I love that it's the starting with self. Like, I can't set a boundary. I can't ask for what I need. I can't advocate for what I need if I don't even know what I need. I think about the conversations that I've been having with my team around work and energy drain is like, let's talk about what areas of your work fulfills you, what areas drain you. We may not be able to get rid of everything that drains you, but there might be someone else that this fulfills. And I think if we don't know that for ourselves, we can't have those conversations at work and then start to actually look at, what do we need to support one another? What do you need when this pops up? What can I do to support you? And I think going back to the level of stress and burnout in the workplace, I just think that richness. So I could talk to you forever and ever, but I want to go back to you, because one of the other things that I love is that you share so many amazing stories and share yourself in this book, which is so lovely. And I know that we relate to other people through their stories. And speaking of stories, I also know from the work that I've done that no matter how much work we've done on ourselves, no matter how much we've looked at our blueprints and our childhood, we all still have some of these self-limiting stories that creep up from time to time and get in our way. And so, Neha, I would love it if you would share, what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader and have the impact you want to have in your life?
All right, before I do that, I'm going to give what I just thought of, which is, if somebody's feeling exhausted right now and totally burned out, or just tired and want a reset, there are a bunch of videos and exercises that you can access that are titled intuitiveintelligenceinc.com/P as in Paul, B as in Barry, M as in me, resources. So intuitiveintelligenceinc.com/PBM resources. And you're going to get access to some of the resources in the book with videos, guided imageries, breathing tools, things that they can do on their own to get them grounded right away. And I'll tell you that when I work with people in the midst of war and veterans returning, these are the most important tools to get people back into their bodies. Of course, I want you to solve the underlying causes, which are the experience of, where did this come from? How do I change it? But right now, you might need those quick tips and really quick resets to get you there. So I want to give you that.
I love that you created that. Thank you.
Yes. It just dawned on me. I said, oh, wow, I should have given him that. What I would say that I catch myself on a silly level, I grew up with a sister who was really an entertainer, kind of like charismatic and the center of our family universe. And as her younger sister, I just wanted to be like her. I was like the athletic academic type. And she was like the social center of the party type. I have these self-limiting thoughts that I might not be interesting enough. I might not be funny enough. I might not be cool enough to be wherever I am, even when I'm walking in to speak. And it's my sister's voice that somewhere in the world became mine because it's not me. And so I think that's the one that I would say I've noticed lately, and especially at the launch of this book, where there's a lot more media attention. There's a lot more podcasts and interviews and things that are coming down. There's always that part of me that goes, do you have enough to say? Like, are you interesting enough? So I think even doing this as my work in life, it doesn't make that all go away. But I will tell you, when I hear it, I recognize it as, oh, that's not your voice. And then I tell it to please go to the beach and I'll let it know if it needs to protect me. But today I don't need it. So it can go on vacation because I've got this.
Say, newsflash, Neha's fine. That can go to the beach. I love it. All right, are you ready for quick questions?
All right, let's do them.
Fill in the blank. Living authentically is?
Living from the inside out rather than living from the outside in. Turning up the voice of your own heart slightly louder than you can hear the voices of others.
Yes, I love that. That's so good. When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do?
Put my big girl pants on and muster all the courage I've got and take one step forward. It might not be a leap, but I'm going to take one step towards it.
Baby steps. I like it. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
Even if I've written a book on communication or written a book on burnout, even after I've helped so many people in my life, there are times that I don't have the conversation the way that I should. And I say to my team, wait a minute, if we add that one more thing in, I'm going to be the one burning out as I'm trying to launch a burnout book. I don't think that writing a book or studying something your whole life makes you not human. I'm still human, but what I will say is I have a lot more tools. And when I fall off the horse, I can get on quicker. So I think there's this illusion that when you become an author and you start to teach this work and you can help all these people, sometimes you don't struggle with it. But in fact, what I'd say to them is, it's probably my greatest struggle in this lifetime, which has made this work so meaningful.
I love it. You're human. Congratulations. What's your favorite go-to movie?
Cinema Paradiso. It won Best Foreign Film in 1989. It's an Italian movie of a little boy and this guy in the film booth and his love of the theater and of cinema and of the movies and how he had to leave his family to go out in the world to do something. He becomes this big character. And it's about how he comes back 40 years later. And it's about love and it's about theater and it's about drama and it's about relationships. And so I just watched it this summer and yep, still my favorite.
All right. What's your go-to song?
Underdog by Alicia Keys.
I love that song. Yes.
Whenever I need a pick me up, I'm like, oh yeah, let's turn on Underdog and it'll get me through another few chapters.
I have an empowerment playlist. That one is on it for sure.
I've noticed now I'm very drawn to musicians that sing songs that feel good, have a great beat, and have deep meaning. We're in Lake Como right now. And I feel that the culture, the food, the connections, the people are as deep as the surroundings and that man and nature live in harmony together. And so I love the paradoxes. That's what really draws me to people. And so I look at someone like Alicia Keys and I see her beauty and her strength and her vocal strength. And then I see the depth of her spirit and what she speaks to.
She's awesome. What is something you can't live without?
My navy cashmere zip up. I get cold a lot. One thing I know is that if I have it near me, I can pretty much do anything.
What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
My boyfriend, Raj.
Raj makes a lot of us happy, but not like you. So we love Raj. We love you two together. What are you grateful for right now?
Just that I have trusted my intuition to be able to take one step at a time forward to lead a path in medicine that's a new path, a path that I don't think a lot of doctors have walked down and a lot of patients have been dying for.
I am eternally grateful for that as well. And I think that your work is so awesome and so needed. And from someone who does a lot of work with healthcare and a lot of work with physicians, even though your work is way beyond healthcare, it's eternally grateful. So I have one closing question for you. If you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
It would be to drop into their heart and communicate clearly and honestly and openly with love.
Well put. Thank you, Neha. Everybody needs to go get this book. There's so much richness in it. And thank you for writing it. Thank you for letting me be part of your process. And thank you for just all that you do. I'm super, super excited for this to get out into the world.
Thank you for this, Rosie. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.